everybody, and welcome to Teaching and Learning for 2020 in a very, very different format. Today I'm going to talk about bird bingo, which is basically where you get to go outside and identify different birds, spend some time with your families, getting to know maybe some of the things that are out and about, and all of that great stuff. So, for those of you who might not know me, my name is Satara Fernando. I am the program chair in energy and environment. You can reach me at satara.fernando at norquest.ca. Really excited to be here to be presenting some of the things we do in the environmental protection technology program. We are launching energy management next year, which is also a very exciting program. So thank you for being here today. And what we are talking about is birding. So what is birding, and why would anybody want to stand outside with a pair of binoculars and try and look at something, try and find something? So in this picture we have a few folks with some binoculars and one gentleman, it looks like, with a spotting scope. In this next picture, you can go birding with a few people. You can go birding with a whole bunch of people. So in this next picture, just a bunch of folks with various styles of cargo pants on, and many different cameras and lenses and all kinds of stuff. And then there's these folks, which are basically some people who are birding in the winter. So many different options. And basically what you're doing is you are getting outside and you are trying to find a bird, or trying to find something in nature, and catch a glimpse of it, catch a potential sighting of it. It's a really enjoyable hobby. And today we're going to go through some aspects of birding, but there's a whole giant world that comes with that. So I think your first question is probably going to be, but it's winter. And there's sort of two ways you can approach this, right? There's the wonderful, joyous parts of winter, which is where you go stand outside in your fancy parka and look up and just think, oh, look at all those beautiful snowflakes. And then there's the miserable, my face hurts, I really don't want to be here type of winter, which is not enjoyable. Okay, so I do encourage you to get outside. I do encourage you to spend some time outdoors, but make sure you are prepared. Wear a coat, mitts, hat, toque. If it's minus 30, that's probably a good time to stay inside. But for the last few weeks, it's been -5, -6. Really great way to a great time to get outside and enjoy the outdoors and enjoy what this season has to offer. Okay, so the fundamentals of birding, and how do we find birds? Why do we need to? Why would we want to go out and see birds? First of all, because it's very interesting. But secondly, how do we find them? How do we even know where to look, right? And there's three fundamentals when it comes to birding: habitat, food source, and motivation. Okay, so basically a place to live, a place to eat, and a reason for being there, right? And if you can fulfill one of these things, you're probably more likely to actually see a bird or actually see something, right? So sometimes for birds, you might be looking at a nest or a forest, a place where they might live. Or you might be trying to find a certain type of tree, like a mountain ash, that has little frozen berries on it that might be attractive to certain types of birds. Or you might be looking for a reason why a bird might be in an area that has nothing to do with habitat or food source. And one of those examples is migratory birds. So there's birds that fly from Florida all the way to northern Alberta and are really interesting looking birds, but sometimes they need a place to stop and a place to rest, right? And so areas in and around Edmonton during migratory bird season will see different types of birds coming and landing and hanging out. So habitat, food source, and motivation. And so, anytime you are out looking for wildlife, looking for animals, looking for anything that that you don't normally see around, one of the things to think about is there something to eat? Is there a place to live? And is there a reason for being there? All right. Okay, so now we kind of know some of the general characteristics of where we want to look for birds. And these are the birds that are going to be on our bingo card. Okay, so I have selected a set of 9 birds, kept it pretty simple, and these are birds that are visible in and around Edmonton. For people who live in the suburbs or places where there's treed areas and parks, or if you feed birds or have a neighbor that feeds birds, more than likely you're going to be able to see the majority of these birds in and around your neighborhood without too much trouble. Okay. The nice things about the birds that I've selected is that they are fairly common, but they're also pretty easy to see without any sort of assistance. So to play bird bingo, all you basically need is just the bingo card. You don't have to have binoculars or anything like that. It is very much just a time to go out and see if you can identify some of these really interesting birds that are in and around where we are here in Edmonton. Okay, so you're probably wondering, how do I know how to identify a bird? What am I supposed to do? If I see a bird, how would I know what it actually is? And so a part of this is understanding the different parts of a bird and what each part is maybe supposed to look like, or what its characteristic shape is. Okay, so there's a few things here that so if you were in the Environmental Protection Technology program, this is the type of slide where I would probably make you memorize all of these things, but since this is not a formal class and just a teaching and learning day for my peers, we're just going to go over some of the highlights, all right? So a few things to pay attention to. The crown is this piece right here at the top of the head. So basically exactly where you would put a crown. And the nape is this part, the back, and so equivalent to us is the back of our neck. So that's right in here. You will notice birds have this tiny cute little nostril that's sitting right there. They have an upper beak and a lower beak, okay? So it's not just referred to as the beak. There's actually an upper and a lower beak. The throat and the breast. And so there's a few different things in and around the head that generally helps with identification, okay? And so additionally, when we start talking about some of these things, what we are looking at can be things like this white-throated sparrow here. Okay, so you can see that the crown, which we talked about, that's the top part of the head, has a stripe, right? The lore, which is this space between the beak and the eye, has some characteristic little modeling. There's an eyebrow stripe, right? There's a throat patch. So you can see how understanding where these things are can actually really help, right? Sometimes birds will all have things like a eye ring. So it literally is just a ring that goes around the eye that's of a different color. And that can help with identification. The other thing is that wings are actually these really interesting things. So wings, there's primary and secondary and all kinds of things that go with this. But the color, the presentation, the way the wings are held, all of those types of things are pieces you can use to sort of put together the puzzle of what bird you are actually looking at, okay? A really great resource, and you can see these all came from the Cornell Lab, is allaboutbirds.org. Really wonderful resources, some great pictures, all kinds of interesting things. that can help you along your birding journey. Okay, so let's get into our first two bingo birds, and those are two different types of chickadees. Okay, and chickadees are smaller birds, often seen. So if you have a neighbor or if you feed birds, you will often have chickadees around. Okay, and in and around Edmonton, we have a few different types, but the two types we are going to focus on today is a black-capped chickadee. So that's the oh, sorry, I will just go back one slide here. That is this chickadee up top here. So that guy right there, and the boreal chickadee, which is this guy here. Okay, so those are our first two bingo folks, and our bingo birds, I guess is what I'm going to say. And so the black-capped chickadee has on its crown, which is right at the top here, a characteristic black cap. It literally looks like he's wearing a little hat. Okay, and what you can see is that that black cap extends right along the eye and comes down into the throat area. Okay, so the cap essentially covers this whole part, comes around the beak and comes down. Okay, a characteristic white cheek. So this part of the face, the cheek, is white. And then, and this is probably one of my favorite descriptors, is that it looks like this guy has a pale underpant or pale underpart, right? So what that is that down here, right, literally on the bottom half, the bottom side of the bird, is quite pale, and it doesn't necessarily have a clear, distinctive color, right? Whereas the boreal chickadee, right, does have some distinctive color there. He's got what people refer to as rusty sides, okay? And remember we talked about the crown? So the black-capped chickadee has a black cap, or a black crown. The boreal chickadee has a brown crown, and we can see that at the top here. So basically right at the top of his head, completely brown, but that crown doesn't extend all the way down, and this guy has a little black chin, right? You can see that on the picture here. There's a small, so still has a little bit of a white patch, not as large as the black-capped chickadee, but does have that small chin. Another piece that is interesting to remember is this gray collar, right? And so you can see on the black-capped chickadee, the black extends all the way back down the nape of the neck. Right here, you have a brown crown, literally just a little crown, and then a gray collar, right? And as you get to learn more and more about birds and more about different species of chickadee, that gray collar becomes quite important. Okay, so those are our first two. The boreal chickadee, which is this guy. Oh, sorry. The boreal chickadee, which is this guy here. The black-capped chickadee, which is that guy there. Right? Two easy birds to find in and around Edmonton. You should be able to check these guys off pretty quickly on your bingo card. Yeah, really great birds to start with. Okay, our next set of birds are house sparrows. And many different types of sparrows in and around these parts. This right here is the male sparrow, and this right here is the female sparrow. Okay, and you will notice with birds, the males tend to be very flashy, really nice colors, and the females kind of have this drab camouflagey look, right? And there's many different reasons for this, natural selection, and for males it's attractiveness when it comes to mating, but for the females a big part of this is safety, right? Birds lay eggs, and the females tend to be the ones who sit on the eggs for an extended period of time. So to be able to camouflage themselves is actually really important. Okay, so how will you know it's a house sparrow and not a boreal chickadee or a black-capped chickadee or any of those types of things? First of all, house sparrows have, and if you can get close enough or have a really good look at their silhouette, you will notice that their upper beak here actually curves down, right? And so there's a little bit of an overlap like this, right? And what that basically does is that shape of the beak is characteristic to this family, right? It's one of the things that separates them from chickadees, which have actually very, very straight beaks. Okay, the other thing is the coloring, right? You can see on the male there's kind of this rusty, darker reddish color. A characteristic coloring around the eye, right, where you do have a little bit of a eyebrow stripe that is white, just a touch, and then a clear black thing, but nothing that's cover the whole cap, right? And the cap here, the crown here is a grayish, right, a grayish tint. For the females, just sort of like a brownish cap, right? Not nearly as distinctive as the boreal chickadee, but you'll notice the color of the beak, right? And so on the chickadees, the beaks were black. On the female house sparrow, you can see the golden beak here. There is also, for those of you who are really, really interested, there's a small white line, right, that comes just under the eye like that, right, just cups underneath, and that is another way of sort of looking at these birds. So, house sparrows. House sparrows love bird seeds. They love, and so these are typically seen in huge numbers. They'll be all together and they'll be eating, and they'll be dumping birdseed onto the floor and then jumping down and eating some of that, right? Very, very prolific eaters. Love to be in and around people who they know will feed them. And so really, really great set of birds. For bird bingo, you just need to find either the male or the female, not both. One or the other will completely work. Okay. Now we're moving on to our next bingo bird. And our next bingo bird is the magpie. And so the magpie is actually right in the middle of the bingo card. And that's because that's usually the free spot. This bird is fairly easy to spot. And if you have a neighbor or you know somebody who doesn't really put out their garbage in a appropriate way, or the bag is open, or sometimes the magpies will come and rip the bag open for them. If there is scavenging food around, magpies are usually there. Really, really smart. This is the black-billed magpie. This is the one we have in and around Alberta most commonly. And you'll notice one of the things that is super special about this bird is the iridescent wings on the back here. So you can see in this part here, you have almost this bluish, greenish tinge. And if the light hits it just right, it's actually this beautiful, shimmery sort of color, right? Really, really beautiful, beautiful wings, a beautiful bird. Generally, when you have people from out of town who come by and they see a magpie for the first time and they're like, wow, what is that bird? That bird is awesome. And people from Alberta are usually like, well, I don't really like that bird. It makes a lot of noise. It eats my garbage. They're all over the place. So appreciate the majesty of the black-billed magpie. And so our chickadees, our sparrows, I would recommend finding somebody who's feeding birds or where there's an abundance of food. If there's a trash can around or somebody who litters or any of that type of thing, you'll probably find a magpie hanging about. Okay. Now, our next group of birds are woodpeckers, northern flickers, sapsuckers, and all of those types of things. Okay. So, flickers are in the family of woodpeckers. They have a slim rounded head, and you can see they have this characteristic beak, right? And this beak is really, really great at tapping into trees and extracting what they need from that. Okay, the northern flicker is a very, very showy bird. You can see the black cheek patch here, the characteristic red on the back of the neck, and that's in the males. And in this part of the world, we have a yellow shafted northern flicker, and you can see under his tail feathers here, there's a strip of yellow, right? And so flickers like to be around trees. They like to be around places where there's lots of food. And for a lot of folks, and I'm just going to flip, oh, wait, I thought I had another slide here. A lot of folks like to feed what's called suet in the winter, which is a combination of fat and seeds and those types of things. And so it's basically this cube that you stick into like a little cage, and the northern flicker will actually hang on to that cage and tap on the hunk of food that's in there and eat that. So really common to see in and around Edmonton. There's quite a few of them near Horlack Park. So that's a really great place to see any of these woodpeckers. Okay, so that's the northern flicker, very showy bird, pretty easy to identify just because it's so unique looking. The next bird we're actually going to look at is a little bit more difficult, okay, and that is a downy woodpecker. Okay, so on your bird bingo, you have the downy woodpecker. And so there's two types here. There's the downy and the hairy, and the easiest way to tell them apart is actually by size, right? You can see the hairy woodpecker is quite a bit larger than the downy woodpecker, okay? The females don't have the characteristic red part on their head here, but you can see the eyebrow, the black stripe around the brow, around the eye, and then the crown, the black crown stripe. So that's the stripe that goes on the top of the head, right? Really beautiful black and white birds, really great birds to sort of spot out there. Anytime you see sort of old forests or trees and trees that are kind of fallen down or those types of things, half dead, you tend to find woodpeckers around. And the great thing about woodpeckers is you tend to hear them before you see them, which makes them a really, really great thing when you're starting off birding, because if you can hear them, you know that they're around, and you can use more than just your sense of sight. You can use your hearing to try and track them down. Okay, this is a great visual by Sherry Amsel, and Sherry does a whole bunch of these beautiful illustrations of birds, and so most of these we find in Alberta at some point in time during the year. For bird bingo, what you are looking for is the northern flicker, which is this guy right up here. And I believe it was the downy woodpecker that's on the card. One of these two. And so basically you're looking for these two. But if you hear a woodpecker, definitely look, because it might be this guy, which is the pileated woodpecker, which is the woodpecker that Woody Woodpecker is based after, and he has a really, really great looking characteristic crown, right? Almost this wave little swoop of red hair, but you can also see he's almost 18 inches tall. Okay, and that is the big identifying factor, is that pileated woodpeckers they're quite large, right? So I really, really hope you get to see one of these while you are out and about. For sure, I think you will see a flicker or one of the hairy or the downy woodpeckers. So yeah, enjoy. And once again, throughout the season, especially as things get warmer, you're going to hear more and more woodpeckers, and then you can try and track them down and see them and see what they look like. All right. The next bird that is on your bird bingo is a waxwing. Okay, so there's two sort of types of waxwings. There's the Bohemian waxwing and the cedar waxwing. And these are really, really cool looking birds. I love these birds. They have just this awesome sort of like tuft of hair that kind of flies back. They have this, it almost looks like they're wearing a little mask that goes over their eyes. And they just sound super cool. Okay. So, on your bird bingo, it just says waxwing. And part of the reason why it just says waxwing is because unless you do have binoculars and all kinds of other ways of really looking at these things, they can be kind of difficult to tell apart. Okay. For the most part, most of the birding that I've been doing in the last few weeks, I've seen the Bohemian waxwings. They are prolific. They're all over the place. Find yourself a mountain ash tree. And what a mountain ash tree looks like is it kind of has this coppery brownish bark, and it has these berries, these little tufts of berries that don't actually fall off. They kind of sit there and go bad, and the waxwings love to eat those in the winter, right? So if you can find yourself a good looking mountain ash tree, and there's some great ones in and around in the north end at Lake Beaumaris. There's sometimes these huge flocks of these waxwings that just come and hang out and eat and make a whole bunch of noise and then leave, right? So you can definitely see these guys. It might take a little bit of walking or some venturing outside, but just a beautiful bird. And I really, really hope that you're able to spot one. Because they are just it's kind of like a treat to look at. Okay, next up is our and this one's a little bit weird. So there's two different birds on this slide. We have the gray partridge or the Hungarian partridge. And this guy's a ruffed grouse, okay? So the gray partridge is what is on your bingo card. And the gray partridge is basically, it's this little, it's a bird, and they're often seen on the ground. And they have this weird run where they kind of run like this. Like they're kind of weird and gangly. And they're super awkward. Super funny to sort of look at. And I've seen more and more of these in and around Edmonton. So I actually saw a bunch of them as I was driving on the Anthony Henday. There's a few that were just kind of like hanging out on the side of the road in a ditch. Really, really weird place to see a bunch of birds, but that is where I saw them. So keep your eyes out. I think of all of the birds on the bingo card, this one might be the most tricky to find, but they're kind of cool birds, and it's a partridge, so maybe you'll find a partridge in a pear tree. I don't know. The alternative, if you cannot find a partridge, is the ruffed grouse, okay? These guys like to hang out in spruce stands, so little forested areas. They like to sort of walk and flop, and they make some really, really great noises. And you can see on the ruffed grouse, there's the characteristic crown, right? It has kind of like this spiky, pokey hair, and that the partridge does not have. And the partridge has a more reddish face. But you can also see that these birds, they're about the size of a small chicken, and they're very round. They're very round in their midsection. And they're very fluffy birds, and so they kind of have a different gait, like a different way of moving than most other birds. Okay, so that brings us to our last bird, which is a blue jay. Okay, most people can identify a blue jay. You can see the beautiful blue crown with the little tuft at the back. A characteristic eye stripe, and then just the coloring, the beautiful blue coloring, which is actually not a true blue color. It's just the way that our eyes end up perceiving it. but just a beautiful bird. Really, really great to see. And one of the things I wanted to draw your attention to is this is the Canadian geographic range for the blue jay. So in the summer, you can see, and if I'm going to approximate where Edmonton is, I would say it's about there. So in the summer, we have lots of blue jays, and we're not actually in the year-round range, and their winter range is down there, okay? So why do we still have blue jays around? And one of the reasons is generally in urban areas, you end up having warmer temperatures, right? There's buildings that are producing heat and spewing them off into the atmosphere. There's shielding from high winds, and there's food. There's lots of people who like to feed birds, who like to feed blue jays, who put peanuts out and those types of things. So sometimes you end up with this microcosm or this microclimate where certain birds who might not generally be found are here year-round, and there's plenty of blue jays around. You just have to know where to look and to be patient. So what I would recommend is if you go for a walk, try and find places where it can be relatively quiet and sort of check out what you would like to do in terms of either waiting for them to show up or find somebody who feeds birds. Sometimes there's lots of folks in and around urban areas that love to have these birds around. So I think you're going to have quite a bit of success in locating them. Okay, so that brings us back to our bird bingo card. Let's just do a quick recap here. We have, I'm just going to go back one slide here. We have the boreal chickadee and the black-capped chickadee. All right, bird feeders. If you find somebody who feeds birds, you will see these birds. The house sparrow, that's a bird feeder as well. The flickers, we're now going to move into our woodpeckers and flickers. This is the sweat I was talking about, so kind of like this cage of fat and bird seed. They love these things, so try and look around. And once again, Horlack Park's a great place for flickers and woodpeckers. So you do have the downy woodpecker here, this little guy. But any woodpecker you find, consider that just a win. The magpie, the garbage bird, right? If you go to a parking lot, you probably see one. The waxwing, find yourself a mountain ash or a tree that had some fruit on it, and you'll probably find some waxwings. The gray partridge, you want to look in fields, flat areas, open fields, those types of things. You'll probably see one of these guys, or in small stands of trees, and you might see a ruffed grouse. Blue jays are just all over the place. They love to be in and around Edmonton. So if you find, and if you're really, really stuck, you can take a walk around Lake Beaumaris in the north end of the city. Lots of birds, lots of blue jays around there. So that is your winter bird bingo. And I have selected birds that are fairly easy to identify from afar. You shouldn't need binoculars or anything like that. And really go out, have fun, see if you can see a few birds. If you get really stuck, you can always send me an email and I can give you some hints as to where you can find them. So, why should you play bird bingo? Very simply, you can win a prize. So what you need to do is print out the bingo card or just write it down in a journal. And what I want to know is when you saw the bird and where you saw the bird, right? Those are the two things. So maybe you're going to say it is November 30th and I saw the bird in my backyard, right? And this is the start. This is the start of birding and the start of a bird guide, right? Lots of folks have huge records, huge notebooks with all of the birds that they have seen, or people will do what's called a big year, which is basically where they try and see as many birds as possible from the 1st of January to the end of December. So lots of great activities you can do here. All right. So try and fill out your bingo cards. If you don't fill out your bingo cards, that's okay. Send me what you have by December 18th, 2020 at noon, and you'll be entered to win this book, which is Birds of Alberta by John Acorn. This is one of my favorite field guides. This is Chris Fisher and John Acorn's book. John is the nature nut. You might, for those of you who are a little bit more vintage, you probably know him from television. John was actually my university professor when I took my first bird ID course. And so very, very fond of this book, and I can't wait to get into the hands of somebody who might be interested in doing some further birding. Now, just going to answer a few questions that I typically get. Lots of people are very interested in birding and how birding works and all of those fun and different things, okay? One of the most common questions I get when I do this lecture is what kind of gear that I have and what kind of gear that I use. In terms of binoculars, I have a pair of Nikon Monarchs. They're 8x42s. I really, really like them. They're a great set. The reason I bought them was because they were on sale. So in terms of binoculars, what I would recommend you do, you can go to a place like McBain Camera and just try them out. Put them up against your face, see how they feel. Maybe you can't do this during COVID, but it's always great to try and understand how that particular set is going to feel up against your face. There's also quite a few places like McBain Camera that will rent you out equipment. So don't feel like you have to go and buy a very expensive set of binoculars. You can rent a few different ones, see how you like them, and those types of things. So if you really wanted to get into birding, I would recommend buying a pair of binoculars, any pair of binoculars to start, and then as you get more and more into it, you can sort of start investing more in some other equipment. There are two really, really great bird stores in Edmonton. There's the Wild Birds Unlimited store, which is downtown, and the Wild Bird General store, which is in the south side. Two, I believe they're both locally owned. Two great places to get lots and lots of resources. If you want to start feeding birds, if you want to know what kind of food you need to attract certain types of birds into your backyard, if you are looking to buy gifts for Christmas or anything like that, these are great places to go. You can pick up field guides like this one, or this is a fun thing to get. This is just a placemat with a whole bunch of backyard birds and their names on it. So those are some of the fun things you can get at these local bird stores that I think would make really great gifts. If you are looking for more information, the All About Birds website, which is the one I mentioned before, most of the pictures in this presentation and some of the other information came from that website. They also have really, really great bird calls, right? And so the next step after sort of learning what a bird looks like is you learn what a bird sounds like, and then you try and identify them by the actual sound. If you are looking to up your game and kind of look for some more complicated birds or some more birds outside of the 9 that I've introduced here, the Edmonton Christmas Bird Count is a really great website that has what is known as the ABC list. So A is sort of your common birds, B are birds that are a little bit harder to find, and C are birds that are super tough to find. And lots of resources, lots of pictures, great place to look for different levels of information. All right, so that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed this session. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Other than that, get outside, have fun. I will put a link in the comments to the actual bingo card, so you will have that all set and ready for you. And other than that, enjoy birding. I hope you have a great time, and send me those bingo results, and one of you will win this book, which I will mail to you. Thank you so much. Have an awesome time outdoors.